Bristol Flyers Podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Bristol Flyers Podcast. This is a very special episode indeed of the podcast, isn't it, Sam?
Certainly is. And why is that, Joel?
Well, we'll get onto that a little bit later on, but you kind of notice it's just the two of us here in the studio this week. But we do have a very special guest who we'll get onto very shortly. This is our BBL Cup semi-final preview episode, so obviously two big games against the London Lions coming up this weekend. Obviously Friday night on Sky Sports in the league, and then on Monday we head over to the Wise campus for the big one. The win and you're in. It's the single game knockout. It doesn't get much better than that, does it?
It feels a bit early for a semi-final, doesn't it?
Well, they always do the cup first, don't they, in the BBL? It always does feel early. I think it feels even earlier because you didn't have that massive group stage at the start that we did previous years. So obviously it was just, and we entered in the quarter-final. So literally it was Manchester Giants at home, advanced to London Lions at home, and then the winner makes the final. So there wasn't actually, there's not actually, two wins and essentially you make a final. It's quite a strange feeling. But
well, that's what you get for getting top four in the regular season, isn't it, John?
Yeah, I think that was what it was. The top four from last year get the bye through to that quarterfinal stage this year. So first ever top four finish, taking full advantage. Sam, obviously you weren't here for the Surrey Scorchers game last week because you were in Perpignan with our principal partners at Habu.
Yeah, it certainly was. What a good trip. Got to see the Bears play. They won their match 19-5, which was good, and just had a great time, basically.
Yeah, it was awesome. And also, we've got to give a shout out to Sam from the Bristol Flyers Supporters Club. Let's get him up here on screen because he was out there in France repping his Bristol Flyers gear. Flyers everywhere we go. He's there watching England play, I think, after the Perpignan game in the World Cup, that game against France. And you see him repping the Bristol Flyers t-shirt. Great to see.
Those pictures must have been before the missed penalty, I think, John.
Yeah, that definitely looks like before Kane went and missed that absolute had an absolute blunder on that second penalty. But there we go. It is what it is. Have to give a massive shout out to our partners at Habu, by the way, because they obviously are our principal partner across all 5 clubs, Bristol Sport, front of shirt. You were out there entertaining them with Steve Devro, who is our commercial manager for Bristol Flyers. And I had a chance to speak to him last week, Sam, and we're still trying to find a sponsor for this podcast.
Well, do you know what? I think what's good, Joel, is that people can see now that we're going to consistently do this. We're getting some good guests on. So, if you want to be a sponsor, get involved. Yeah,
do reach out at Bristol Flyers or just get Steve will reach out to people as well, I'm sure. He's got all the contacts. So we have no doubt he will come through for us. We'll get on to Friday's game against Surrey later on in the podcast, but this week it is our BBL Cup semi-final preview episode, as we say. So we have a very special guest who is joining us actually on the line. He is none other than BBL legend Drew Lasker. Drew, how's it going, man?
What's up, fellas? Thanks for the invite. I feel like this is very ironic being on the Bristol Flyers podcast.
Yeah, I know, right? We'll get onto that. We'll get onto that elephant in the room very shortly, indeed. But it's great to have you with us here on the podcast. Drew, you're making Bristol Flyers podcast history here by being our very first dial-in guest into the studio. It's the first time we've had someone join us remotely for the podcast.
Hey, well, I am very humble for the opportunity. I've been checking you guys out, seeing you on the socials, and it's perfect timing because I actually was going to tweet last night that I feel like I need to get on a podcast because I got a lot of information I want to put out there into the universe.
Awesome. Well, this is exactly why we got you on. Get you from a neutral perspective because it's tough for us. We get caught. We're working around the club every day. We're seeing the players every day. The team is doing so well on the court. It's easy for us to get kind of caught up in all the excitement. But to have you come on the podcast and offer a neutral perspective about how you feel the team's been getting on from an outsider's point of view will be fantastic for us. But first of all, Drew, we have to get to the elephant in the room here. Obviously, at the start of the season, and Drew obviously does the coverage for the Sky Sports broadcasts, and the BBL asks you and Kieran Achara and Mike Tuck to send in your pre-season predictions, don't they?
Yes. Well, let me. This is why I miss being on a podcast, right? Because everything that I do now is snapshots, and I don't get an opportunity to have an explanation. those picks that we provided was before I even got to see a preseason game. So, you got to take those things with a grain of salt. I'm not making any excuses, but, the reason why I picked Bristol last is because the history of the BBL, there's two things that equals success, right? Continuity and experience. And if I looked at your team, the continuity was gone. You lost Josh Rogers. You lost Rafael Thomas Edwards. And then there's no experience. Everyone on your team is under the age of 26 except Leslie Smith. And so I just thought, okay, this is going to be a tough season for the Bristol Flyers. But boy, was I wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you see it there on screen now. It's there's Drew's pre-season picks. Yeah, London up in first, Leicester up in second. As expected, they're the teams that usually are around that kind of area. Manchester in third. Obviously, they had some big investment with some big names coming in. You got to scroll quite far down that list to find Bristol Flyers at the bottom there, Drew. But obviously, Drew, having you here on the podcast, is there anything that you want to say to the Bristol Flyers fans right now?
Hey, look, I made my round of apologies on Sky Sports. I made it on Twitter, but I will make another one here officially on the Bristol Flyers podcast. To the fans, I apologize for my ignorance of voting you guys last, but I would like to say this as well because I listened to a couple of player interviews. I listened to Coach Andreas in his interviews early on in the season. It was very clear, and correct me if I'm wrong, those guys were upset that they were picked last. I could hear it in the interview. So my question to you guys is, would you have as much success if you weren't picked last? Because obviously that was a motivation factor, and obviously it was locker room material.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question because obviously we had Mike Miller on the podcast a few weeks ago, and we were talking about this exact thing. So Mike came on and we talked about the preseason predictions and where the guys placed them and stuff. And on their team WhatsApp group, he said they have it as their phone background. So, you can set the background on WhatsApp. So they've set your preseason predictions as their background on WhatsApp. So they're seeing it every single day when they're in the players only. This is the players only. It's not the one with team and staff. It's just like the players only. You know what it's like, Drew, as a player. You have your players only WhatsApp group. You have your team WhatsApp group. They've put it as the players only WhatsApp group background, which is awesome, isn't it?
What the players don't know is we actually paid Drew to put them last so that we would get that extra motivation. So we appreciate you doing it, Drew. Thank you.
Hey, it wasn't just Drew though. We can't be hounding you here, Drew, on the podcast because it wasn't just you that picked Flyers last. I know Kieran Achara had Flyers dead last. I think Mike Tuck had Flyers in 9th, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And for some reason, I seem to take all the bullets on social media and in the public eye. I'm like, no one has mentioned Kieran Achara's name or Mike Tuck, but you know what? I'll be that guy. I'll stand up and take the fall. I'll be the fall guy.
Also, well, Drew, we appreciate you coming on, and I'm sure the Flyers fans will really appreciate that. So thanks for... now we've got that bit out of the way, we can crack on with our Cup semi-final preview now, can't we?
I love that. Thanks, Drew. Appreciate it.
One more thing before we start this Cup semi-final preview. I noticed Amy Atkinson on Twitter. I don't know, Drew, if you see your notifications on Twitter after Flyers play at home, especially when they win, but she's very active. She's always tweeting you, isn't she? One of our members of our Bristol Flyers supporters club.
Yeah, it's funny because so many people at me that a lot of times it just gets lost in the sauce. But when you are persistent, I start to pay attention and I start to recognize the name. So Amy Atkinson, I definitely know who you are now because every time they win, you send me a little cheeky tweet.
There it is. Great stuff. Amy Atkinson, massive shout out for her on the podcast. She's had her on our little open training last week, didn't we? She was awesome.
They're great. And more cookies for you this week as well.
Yeah, I had the extra cookie without you, Sam. So they're going to have to give you double cookies now to make up for it.
Now you've said it, she probably will as well.
Yeah, so. Probably. You never know. Drew, thanks so much for spending some time out your day to join us here on the Bristol Flyers podcast. Of course, back-to-back games against London Lions. It's not too often you see teams like this go back-to-back over, 2 games against each other in a 4-day stretch. One of them being a league game, one of them being, a one-and-done cup semi-final. I just kind of want to sort of gauge your thoughts on how you feel the Flyers have started the season from a neutral point of view.
Yeah, well, obviously they've surprised the masses with their start. Even, best case scenario, I saw middle of the pack. Never in 100 years did I think that they would be up there at the top, where we've seen them in first place for a couple of days throughout the season. And so, when I look at their numbers, first of all, I must say they're one of three things that I've yet to see in the flesh. I haven't seen them, Caledonia, or it's one more team that doesn't come to, that doesn't come to my mind. But I haven't seen live, and the Bristol Flyers are one of the toughest teams for me to analyze, just because they're not very traditional. If you think about it, like, everyone looks to be the same size, everyone looks to play the same way. So I cannot wait to see them on Friday so I can actually figure out exactly what they are. But when you dive into the numbers, it's hard to see how they have been so successful when you think they turn the ball more than anybody else. They're one of the worst shooting teams inside the arc. But the reason why they are successful is because they got the double E's. And the double E's for me is they play with energy and effort. And I always say, when you play with energy and effort, it covers up a lot of mistakes. And then you defend and they rebound the hell out of the ball. So, and the major difference between this year and last year, because last year you guys were a great offensive rebounding team, is that now that you're converting them. Last year, you're probably middle of the pack when we talk about second chance points. Now you're second in the league. So not only are you able to gobble up some of those offensive rebounds, you're now finishing. And then you sprinkle in defense and, the energy and effort that they play in on a week-to-week basis, that equals success.
Yeah, I think also it's not really a number that we look at like traditionally in basketball, but if you look at the league table right now, Bristol Flyers, their points differential, so for and against, is like a plus 18 right now, plus 19 right now. London Lions are plus 116, Leicester Riders plus 94. Obviously, we're coming off that win over Surrey last week by 18 points. So going into that Surrey game, Flyers were only a plus one on points for versus points against. So it shows that the team's able to win those tight games down the stretch as well. And I saw a tweet from you talking about like how that's not really a you can't train that. It's toughness. It's physical, and that's been the identity of Bristol Flyers over the last few seasons, especially that team from that finished fourth in last season. Is that mental toughness to get over the line in those tight games down the stretch?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other side of it as well is very unusual for a young team, right? Usually, young teams lose those type of ball games, but that just says a lot about Coach Andreas, who I must say, and I've said it in the media, he has evolved so much as a coach. He's gotten so much better. He's adapted to the BBL, and so he's the lead of those troops. But then the way that the Bristol Flyers are winning, it equals success in April and May when you get down to the nitty gritty, when you get down to the playoffs, when you get down to cup, trophy, semifinal games, and championship games. You have to find a way to win ugly, and then you got to be able to win when everything gets tight, which they've proven they can do over and over again.
I know you've not seen them live yet, but who are some of those players that have impressed you most from what you've seen?
Yeah, well, firstly, VJ King is a bona fide scorer, just smooth with it. And then Thomas Bell, every time I watch you guys on the screen, he just jumps off the screen. His talent it catches your eye. It's eye-catching. And actually, I hadn't paid attention to it until I watched your last game, and you guys had mentioned it over the comms of how clutch Jelani Watson-Gale had been. And then I went and looked at his numbers, and I'm like, wow, he's having an excellent season, and it's just kind of flying under the radar. And what makes it even so much greater is that he's actually British. He's a British guard, and so that's even more so rewarding. But then, last but not least, I gotta give a big shout out to Malcolm Delpeche. His numbers are down from last year, but that's out of necessity. He doesn't need to be that big time scorer that he was last year. But I actually tweeted this last week. Over the last 5 seasons, he is by far the most improved player. When I think of all the players that's been in the league, I know he kind of left and came back, but he has turned into the big bro. I remember a time earlier where Marcus was that guy, and now as last season, Malcolm has definitely surpassed his brother, and now he's the big bro out of the two and really improved his game massively.
Yeah, I think particularly like his footwork as well has been like really like improved drastically. Like from what we've seen when he first joined, because obviously they both came into Flyers as sort of fill-in placements, while Dan Adozie, Mike Vigor were out with you, Drew, and Coach K as well at the Commonwealth Games, and then they all came back. And our front court that year was absolutely crazy. We had at the end of the season we had like Mike Vigor, Daniel Adozie, Leslie Smith, Marcus Delpesh and Malcolm Delpesh. Like, this is a starting five right there, just like bigs. Like that was a crazy lineup we had. Like that was towards the back because they stayed for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
So they came in around, I think it was like March or February. You guys went out to Commonwealth Games, and then we had that front court was stacked because they stayed for the rest of the season. And that was the year, Drew. I think the Flyers met Newcastle, right, in the playoffs. They met your Newcastle Eagles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
2018. I obviously, don't remind me. You're right. We went to Commonwealth Games in 2018. Coach Kapoulis was my coach, and then we returned back and we faced these guys in the playoffs where we had never lost to the Bristol Flyers before. But I knew we were in trouble after that first leg because this has happened to me. I played these aggregate games so many times that you have an eerie feeling in your stomach when you know you left some points on the table. And that was a game that we should have won by 20 at home. And Bristol made a late run, and I can't remember what the deficit was, if it was 11 or something like that.
Yeah, I remember. It was 11 points that we had to make up at home. And you guys were up by 20 at one point in that game. I think in the third, we managed to go on a run, sort of the back end of that fourth up at Sports Central, which was a really tough place to play. Like Drew said, we never beat them before going into that game on the Sunday. And it was a rare Sunday afternoon game. It was like a 4 p.m. tip-off or something like that. We'd never done a 4 p.m. tip-off on a Sunday ever at SGS Wise campus. It was like, and then I think we started the game, that second leg, on like a 6-0 run or something like that. And it was that moment, there was like a big block. I think it was Sar Nimley, I think it was, from you guys out in like transition. And Dozy just comes over as a chase down block, and we're 6-0 up. And then there was that belief at the SGS Wise campus. And I think that kind of atmosphere at Drew, like, we talk about like the Flyers and how well they're doing this season. You have to remember that obviously, what is it, like 10 of our first 13 games have been at home this season. So the big question, I guess, from you guys as neutrals is, can Flyers get it done on the road? Yeah,
and just to piggyback off that point, the Newcastle Eagles haven't played a 4 o'clock Sunday game since then, so we weren't used to it either. So that atmosphere that day was the loudest I had ever heard it in the BBL. Like you said, you guys started off 6-0. Nimley and Jayshawn Page got in big-time foul trouble. I think Page got 3 fouls in the first quarter. And once you guys got that belief and that place started rocking, I knew we were in trouble.
I think that's what, I mean, we've only seen, like, so that game, I feel, was one of the games where, like a magical afternoon at White, like the atmosphere just felt different that day. Yeah. The other day that I think that it felt different, last season's second leg, Manchester quarterfinal, the Delpesh block to win the game, the Miller fade away from the short corner. Those two were like magical nights, I feel, at Wise campus. And now you look ahead to, the potential for, everything's teed up for another magical afternoon at SGS. It's a 7 p.m. tip-off. It's a random Monday evening. It's Christmas. It's, do you know what I mean? Like, it's a sold-out game already. The fans are really buzzing for it. Like, and it's a one-off game to make a final. So it's not this aggregate score that we're so used to seeing over the course. So, like, what do you like if you were to, obviously we'll talk about the game on Friday a bit later on, but the cup semi-final on Monday, Drew, what kind of type of game are you expecting to see there on Monday?
Well, first of all, Bristol Flyer fans, you're welcome. I'm the one that pulled that draw, so don't say I've never done anything for you before. But yeah, you're right. It is set up for you guys on a platter, because if you think about it, the London Lions schedule, they flew off to Turkey on Monday. They'll be flying back in the country on Thursday, playing you guys at home on Friday, then traveling to Wise campus on a Monday. And so, I just got back off a trip with those guys. It is relentless. So they're right there on the table for you guys to get them. But like you say, I am so glad that the league got away from this two-legged semifinal game. Just one leg, let's throw the ball up and may the best man win. And so I think you guys are in a situation where you're playing with house money. You have absolutely nothing to lose. The pressure will be on the London Lions. You can go in there, play freely. You're at home. The place is going to be sold out. I wouldn't say that's a shoe-in game for London.
Yeah. I think also the fact that, like, we've played them once already this season, they've come and experienced it, and that was a tight game throughout in the league when we played them, what was it, back in November, I think it was. Yep. We came out on top with 4 points, and we were leading. I think we almost had a double-digit lead at one point, and then they turned on the tap, as Dan Routledge likes to say on his podcast. They turned the tap on in that fourth quarter, and they started to really make a charge at it. I think Decker hit an outrageous shot from the top of the three-point line to make it like a one-possession game. But we just managed to find a way to hold on. So I think that belief as well, when you've beaten a team like that, they've shown they're beatable this season. They've lost to Sheffield already. They've lost to Bristol in the league. So it is set up. And like you say, there's no pressure on us whatsoever. So we will see on that game. Drew, I do want to talk to you a bit about London Lions, of course, as well, because we have got you on as a neutral, so I want to get both sides of the coin. And as you say, you had a chance to go out with them and experience their recent Euro Cup trip to Greece the other week. Just talk us a bit more in further detail about what that experience was like for you.
It was really eye-opening from a lot of different angles. First of all, I came back from that trip with a deep appreciation for what the London Lions are doing for British basketball, because their schedule is something. I mean, I didn't even play, and I remember, well, I met up with the guys at 7:30 p.m. on Sunday. We took a red-eye to Greece, and we landed at 3 o'clock, got on the bus. We drove 3 hours to Patras. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. I remember getting off the bus, and I was absolutely delirious. And we literally went straight to breakfast. And so from there, it was breakfast to we got, I think, 3 hours sleep, and then it was another snack, and then it was coaches meeting, and then it was team film, then it was film, straight to practice. And it was just a lot. And so, I didn't. A lot of those guys on the team, I didn't know personally. And, you always kind of judge a book by its cover, right? That's just human nature. But a lot of these guys are completely different from what I thought they would be. I've been around a lot of teams, and one thing that teams and players do a lot is they complain. We find stuff to complain about. I didn't see this team complain about anything the entire trip. Like, there was a lot of things to be able to complain about, but everybody on the team, they have great culture. Usually you get with teams and they're very cliquey. There's certain guys that hang out together. Everybody hangs out with everybody. And I got an opportunity to have 20 people traveled. I got an opportunity to have an individual conversation with everybody. And I was just blown away. Very professional. And it is the example they are setting for hopefully more teams to be able to improve their infrastructure within the BBL, and hopefully more teams will be able to follow their lead in Europe.
Yeah, I think that's massive, isn't it? Like having teams represent the league on the international stage, like obviously London Lions playing in Euro Cup, Leicester Riders, they were in the Basketball Champions League qualifiers this year. I know they didn't opt in for the FIBA Europe Cup when they, if you don't make the Champions League, you drop down into the FIBA Europe Cup. But how important do you think is it to have more than one team representing the British Basketball League on an international stage?
Well, it's essential, right? If you think about all the top leagues, you have multiple teams, playing in various competitions. And so if we can get to the point where we have 3 teams playing in Euro League, Euro Cup, and Champions League, or whatever the case, that's just going to build our profile. Because the thing that I heard over the years from agents and people around the globe is that they didn't respect the British Basketball League. But then when you had players come into the league, they would always say, man, this league is way better than what I thought. The reason, because there's no visibility, so nobody gets an opportunity to see it. So that's what playing in Europe does. So now teams get to see the London Lions play in Europe, and they're like, oh, wow, this team who's 4-3 in Euro Cup, they play in the British Basketball League? Well, that must be a good league. And then there was various guys on the London Lions who told me, they were like, man, there are some good players in this league. This league is way better than what it's perceived to be. So it's all about perception. So once we start getting more teams playing in Europe, taking preseason trips, traveling more, then teams will be able to see leagues. We'll be able to gain more respect from the masses.
Yeah. I know that is something that we as a club are aspiring to eventually do one day. And obviously, we've got long-term plans for our own home right here at Ashton Gate, next door to the stadium. We're looking to increase the capacity up to over 3,500 here, which would be a massive challenge for us kind of going forward. But that's definitely something that when we have conversations in the office all the time, don't we, Sam? About that's the ultimate goal. Coach Kapoulis is super passionate about wanting to see Flyers play at the highest possible level they can.
Bristol Flyers getting a plane company as their sponsor as well to go to Europe. It's easily done, isn't it?
That's it. It's the perfect link, right? It's the perfect link. Hopefully one day. In the future, we could see Flyers play on the international stage.
Do you know what? And this is the same, I think, as when I watch like other sports as well. But obviously in the BBL, we want to see Flyers do the best they can. But when we're watching London perform in Europe, I really want to see London do well. I want to see London get through to the next round and whatever. And it's really exciting. I didn't quite realise how tough their schedule was, though. Like, they've basically got another half season that we've got, haven't they? They've got another like 18 games on top minimum, which is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. I think, Drew, also, like, you look down the squad, and I don't know about you, but from seeing them from afar, what they're doing right now and how they're playing, I feel like right now they're probably playing some of the best basketball I've seen them play all season long. I think, and I don't know about you, but you kind of look down the roster now and you can kind of see these players fitting into their roles. Whereas when the team first arrived, it was like, who's going to be the leading scorer? And these are all these massive name players coming in. Your Sokos, your Queeleys, like these are players that big names coming into the BBL. But now I see that everyone's starting to fit into that Coach Schmidt system, right?
Yeah, and I'll give you guys some intel because I had tweeted this that I felt like the London Lions were re-energized after international break. Now, I tweeted that assuming that they got literally a break because, as I mentioned, the schedule's brutal. They've been here since August, and I was like, they just hit the reset button, was able to get away from the game for a couple days, and that's why they're playing better. However, Coach Schmidt told me on the trip that was far from the truth. What happened over the international break is they treated it as a preseason because they didn't get a preseason because half of their guys were gone from Eurobasket. So when they all got together, the BBL season was starting a week later. And so he treated the international break as a preseason conditioning test. And also they got to do some team bonding, did some PowerPoint where everyone got to share their story and get to share with the team who they are, because these are things that they didn't get an opportunity to do. So that's why you can kind of see the camaraderie, because now they know each other on a deeper level. And I know from my playing experience, if I know who you are to the core, then I'm going to go to battle for you even much more than opposed to if I just know that you're my teammate. So these are things of why you see the London Lions, are looking much, much better.
Yeah. Well, they don't seem, they're always pushing forward as well. They don't seem content on where they're at right now. Like, you only look down this week, they're announcing, former Euro Cup, EuroLeague point guard Jordan Taylor. Do you know what I mean? So, and this is, they're making little tweaks. And even though they're sitting top of the BBL, they're playing well in Euro Cup. They're always trying to push forward. I don't know about you, Drew, but and I was going to get to this, Sam, later on our news segment of the podcast. But they obviously they didn't announce Taylor in with a traditional announcement that we'd sort of be used to. It was essentially like an injury report saying Mioni's going to be out for about a month. Tariq Phillips unfortunately out for the season, and then by the way, we've had Jordan Taylor. Just put that at the bottom. Just put that at the bottom. Just a former EuroLeague and Euro Cup player. We'll just add that in the bottom there. What did you make of that, Drew? What did you make of that signing?
I mean, I don't know much about him. I had to obviously lean on Daniel Routledge, and his words to me was he is legit. EuroLeague, Euro Cup experience, and he's going to give them exactly what they've been missing. I've been saying the whole time. A bona fide point guard where you can move Luke Nelson off the ball, because Luke Nelson is a better player when he's scoring and not having to facilitate, although Luke Nelson has gotten much better at the position. But you got to respect that. Like, I can respect anybody who is not, they're not just happy to be at the dance. They want to win the thing. So, they can sense it, they can feel it, that not only do they belong, but they are one of the best teams in the competition. And so they're upgrading the roster and they're swinging for the fences. And my only pushback and small criticism is that a signing like that needs an official statement. Myself and Jay Marriott have said it over the years. We feel like this league needs to be more transparent when it comes to injuries, when it comes to announcing players. Like, he is too big of a player to just be slipped inside of an injury report. Like, there needs to be an official statement from the London Lions with this new signing.
Yeah, I agree. Like, that's one of the biggest things that we do. Like, we love to really ham home signings. Like, we get them in a few days before, we'd make a bit of video content, write a press release, do a cool graphic for it, maybe a first interview with them as well for socials. Like, things like that help build the players' brand, help build the team's brand, make the team look great because they're signing these high caliber players. So yeah, I think same. Like, from someone who works in content and digital, like, that's probably what I would have expected them to do. But nonetheless, a great signing, and who knows? We might see even. I know he didn't play against Cheshire at the weekend, but whether or not he's a European or whether a Europe-only player, or whether he's going to be playing domestically in BBL, I guess we'll have to wait and see on Friday, I guess, which leads us quite nicely into the Sky game down at the Copper Box. Drew, are you covering it for Sky?
Yeah, I am, and that must be, I must say that's some respect to you guys. Maybe they're hiding him because they're worried about the Bristol Flyers, who is ascending, so they don't want to give you guys any intel. But yeah, I'll be down in London covering that top of the table clash, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the Flyers live. Yeah,
should be a great game, shouldn't it? It's it's on Sky Sports. It's on the Sky Sports YouTube channel. You can go watch it for free if you want to online. Should be a great game. One thing I have noticed, Drew, on the Sky Sports broadcast this season that you've been on, is you've been wearing the absolute heat on the feet this season. Talk us through, or what have you got up your sleeve for Friday's game?
Oh, you guys better be ready for this, because I'm going to catch everybody off guard, because I'm going outside the box on this one. No one is going to expect this, and so my sneaker check for Friday night is going to be different, I should say. But I keep saying, because people say you got heat and you got a lot of different shoes, that's the only thing I can buy myself with a wife and 2 young children. They get everything else. That's the only thing I get. I don't get anything else, so I take great pride in when I get a pair of new sneaks.
Love it. I'm a bit of a sneaker freak myself. I'm massive on my shoes.
He'll be in the office with the Nike app, getting all of us around to try and get the next best thing.
Oh yeah,
as well.
I'm getting everyone in the Bristol Sport office to try and get me the next drop on sneakers app, 100%. Because you never win. I literally never win on the sneakers
necessary.
App. Let's do. I mean, it needs to happen. I did have managed to get a pair of those lost and founds on resale though, so very happy about that. That was a late birthday present to myself, which is great to see.
I've yet to see them actually yet, Joe. You need to get them in the office.
I might wear them on Friday. I might rock them out on Friday. Why not? Bring them down to the Copper Box.
Hey, you should. And I'll get you involved in my sneaker chat.
There we go.
Do that.
Yeah, we'll do
That'd
it.
be great.
A little
Make sure you
crossover.
rock 'em.
A little crossover. Love to see it.
Yeah.
Drew, kind of like.
Sir.
We'll talk about the game on Friday, because I know we're pressing on for time, but we'll talk about the game on Friday first. And obviously, it's the second time these two teams are meeting. The first time that the Flyers are visiting the Copper Box in league play. And I guess both coaches, because they're playing on Monday, they almost don't want to reveal too much of their hand, I guess, right? It's going to be quite a strange... Is it going to be quite a strange game on Friday, do you think?
I don't think so. I think that's a thing of the past. Like, we used to do that a lot. There's been many times where we faced a team in the league and then we were facing them in either a championship game or semi-final. And so, like, we would, like, go 2-3 zone, something we would never do during that game. But I think nowadays it's way too much information out there. It's too much video footage that no one can hide. So I don't think that either team will be looking to hide anything because everything that you've done this far is available and accessible to everybody. Back in my day, it was barely any content out there. So unless you were seeing people live, you might not know a player's style. A team style. So it was easier to kind of hide things. But I think both teams that go into this game thinking about business first, and that's being top of the league because both teams currently sit tied. Obviously, London have 2 games in hand, but I'm sure Bristol would love to walk away with the Copper Box with sole possession of first place.
Yeah.
Do you think as they're coming back from Europe, they'll then have they'll play a different team on Friday than they would on Monday?
Yeah, absolutely. They've done it all season long. Their roster from Europe has always been different on that following game, and that's just because it has to be. Like I mentioned before, with the travel schedule, with how much these guys are on their feet, because, people were asking me, how was Greece? I was like, I don't know. I didn't get to see it. I was in the gym, eating, sleeping, or in the film room, so it's no holiday. These guys are working, so you'll see a different lineup from what you'll see because this is a big game for them, Turk Telecom, a chance for them to move up from, they're currently 4th place, so they'll be thinking about that first, but then when they get the BBL action, they'll be going with a couple of fresh bodies to be then focused on the Bristol Flyers.
Do they have a European game next week as well?
They got Paris, I think. Is it Paris the following week? Wednesday at home?
They get in Thursday, play you guys Friday, play you guys Monday, play Paris at home on Wednesday. So it's non-stop. It never stops. So, it's tough.
I'm sure Flyers fans, like sort of listening to this podcast, like a lot of them will be sort of transferred from like football or rugby, where traditionally you play the 1 game a week, or you play like in like the Championship, it's like Tuesday, Saturday, so it's not, and you have a much bigger squad. So I think a lot of fans maybe listening might be like, oh, wait a minute, like surely they're not going to win all 4 games. If you're a fan, you think that, like, wouldn't you? You're like, how can they not? Something's going to get dropped one way or another. They're going to drop one here, they're going to drop one there. So I imagine a lot of Flyers fans right now listening to this sort of hoping it would be that one on Monday on the thing. But you know for a fact that there's so much pressure on London this season to do well with the amount of money they spent in their team that a game like the Monday game, they're going to look to play a full strength squad as possible that they possibly can, because it's a one and done game to make a final.
Yeah, and that's where I think the narrative has changed slightly. It's definitely changed for me now that I've gotten some insight, is that, yes, they're the favorites. Yes, they're supposed to win. But it's inevitable that they're going to lose. They've already lost 2 games. And so I never thought that they would run the table, and I never thought that it would be a landslide. I said from the very beginning that guys in this league are way too competitive. Teams are too prideful that they would just run the table. They haven't blown anybody out by 30 points yet, whereas you look at their roster, technically they should be winning by 30 or 40. But it's sport. Anything can happen. You got a lot of hungry guys in this league that's looking to rise up themselves. And then also the schedule. So, yes, they will. It's inevitable that they will lose. And if they do on Monday, I don't think it would be the end of the world. It's definitely about timing. I think from the Bristol's perspective, they should be going into that game with the mindset that they are there for the taking. The timing couldn't be any better for the Bristol Flyers to get that win on Friday or to get that win on Monday.
Just before we wrap up this cup semi-final doubleheader preview, can we get? I know you're being neutral on the Sky broadcast, but can you give us a prediction? What are your thoughts? Who do you think is going to come out on top on that game on Friday, and obviously that semi-final on Monday as well?
Oh, put me on the spot just when I got on the good side.
He's shaking his head over here because he's apologised to the fans for their predictions, and now he's going to chuck them back down again and pick London to win both.
Well, hey, look, guys, I think Friday is a game that it's more important for London than it is for Bristol, because it is a home game for London Lions, and currently Bristol has that head-to-head 1-0. So it's more of a must-win for the London Lions. So I think that they will get the job done. It won't be easy, but again, I think from the other side of it as well, we need to see how the Bristol Flyers are going to perform on the road, because I saw the Leicester Riders game, and from their standpoint, I think success for the Flyers would be coming out of that game competitive. that will give me hope and confidence that moving into January and February, where 6 of the 9 games are on the road, that they will be able to get a couple of those, because I feel like they need to win. You guys need to go 4-5 or 5-4. You need to get out of that February schedule at 500. And so this is going to tell us a lot on Friday. Moving on to Monday, man, it's a tough call because, like I said, Bristol Flyers playing with house money, nothing to lose. But I think when it all comes down to it, I do think the cream is going to rise to the top, and it's hard for me to see the Lions losing that game just because they've experienced Wise Campus. They know what the environment is like. If this was their first trip there, I would go with the upset. But the advantage for London Lions is that they've been there before, and they lost there. So the sense of urgency will be at an all-time high for the Lions, and so I see them going 2-0 over these next 4 days.
Well, there we go. He's just done it again, hasn't he? I'm joking.
Sorry, guys. Hey, well, there you go. Well, we know the WhatsApp group will be updated. The picture will be updated. So there you go.
There we go. We can use a clip from the podcast. I'll send it on to Mike, and he can put it in the WhatsApp group. A clip of you saying we're going to go into this weekend.
Drew used to be in the fall guy.
Drew, we've got 2 more things before we can let you go. The first one is I want to get your thoughts on this tweet by Josh Bett, who I don't know if you saw it on Twitter last week. If we can get it up here on screen, Fred. He basically said, how about a BBL commentators all-star game? And he's broken down the teams into 2 sections. Team 1 has got Ant Rowe, Pablo Cheeks from Plymouth City Patriots, and Paul Nicholson from Plymouth City Patriots, Melita Carr and Azania Stewart. Team 2 has Dan Routledge, John Hobbs, Drew. It's got you and I in there, and Niall Gray. What are your thoughts on that one, Drew?
Well, my first initial thoughts was I didn't know how to take it. I wasn't sure if I should take it as a positive that they're saying that I'm a better commentator than Kieran Achar and Mike Tuck, or that Mike Tuck and Kieran Achar are superior basketball players than myself, that it would be unfair for them to be involved.
I think we should draft them in. What do you reckon? We could draft them in on our team, I reckon. We take them.
Yeah. We need, both teams should have a 6-man, so we'll take one of both. They're saying that we need some power inside, so we need some beef. So I think we could take Mike Tuff to make sure he can keep Azania Stewart out the paint. But I like our chances. I'll give you the game plan here now, Joel. Just give me the ball and move the hell out the way.
I'll do it, mate. I'm going to rack up like 20 assists this game. I'll just be dishing it to Drew, and he can just run. The old, what's this one? This one here, where they just do the whole, just give me the ball and get out of the way.
Boom. I used to play
1-4 low, baby. All game long.
I'll just sit in the corner. I'll just sit in the corner and just camp out there. I'll be ready for the catch if you need it, Drew. All right? I got a mean baseline jumper from free. All right?
I'm a willing passer. You be ready, man.
I had been known to knock down some baseline jumpers during my time at the SGS Basketball Academy.
10 years ago, Joel.
That was
You're
10
living
years.
in the past.
That was over 10 years ago, but hey, I reckon I can still knock some down. What do you reckon? Drew, final thing we got to do before we let you get off on your way. We have this thing on the podcast called Word of the Week. Every week we ask our guests on the podcast to select a word, any word they want. It could be as random as they like. We whack it up on our wheel, which we'll bring in shortly after you leave. We'll give it a spin. Whichever word it lands on will be the word of the week that I have to squeeze into the commentary for the broadcast for our next game, which will be Monday's game against London Lions. Before you go, we'd love you to give us a word. It can be as random as you like to add to our wheel. What do you think?
Ooh, what comes to mind? That's a tough one. That's on the spot, fellas. Let's go with I'm gonna really trip you up. Hippopotamus.
Hippopotamus.
Good luck fitting that in.
Brilliant.
Good luck fitting that in.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Drew. I really appreciate that. Listen, I reckon I got another forfeit coming my way. So I don't know if you saw last week, Drew. Corey Samuels gave me the word focaccia a few weeks ago. I wasn't able to get it on the podcast, and as a penalty, I had to sit here in a full Flyers kit, jersey and shorts with focaccia on the back to do the podcast last week. So
awesome. Well, I think we'll see you again because that'll be tough to fit in.
We will see. I'll add it onto the wheel and hopefully it doesn't land on hippopotamus, but there we go. Drew, thank you so much for spending time out your day joining us here on the Bristol Flyers podcast.
My pleasure, Joel, Sam. I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun, guys. Keep doing what you're doing. Love the content. I love the ambiance. It looks so beautiful. The backdrop. Keep up the great work, guys.
Yeah, we'll have to get you to come down here. I know you do the BBL show. We've been talking about getting you guys down here to come and do some stuff at some point. So we'll pick up that conversation off air. It's been hectic to try to fit everything in with schedules and timing and stuff, but we'll definitely have the BBL show come down here later on in the new year. Drew, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We will see you at the game on Friday.
All right, fellas. Thank you for your time.
Cheers,
Catch
Drew.
you guys later.
See you later.
Appreciate it.
Peace. Bye.
Sam, how good was that?
That was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. He's such a nice guy. Even though we all hated him for his predictions, he turns out he actually is a nice guy after all. Isn't that right, Joel?
He was awesome. Really, really good stuff. There's a couple more bits I want to bash through before we wrap up, and I know we're pushed for time here, and I've literally got to be in a meeting in like 10 minutes' time. But I reckon we can squeeze it all in.
Let's go for it.
Let's get round to this week's news.
You're listening to the Bristol Flyers Podcast.
All right, time to look at what's been going on around the BBL this week. We can't not talk about Friday's game even against the Surrey Scorchers.
I mean, you're going to have to do most of it. Joel wasn't there, so...
I'll tell you what happened. Flyers had a bounce-back win against the Scorchers, 78 points to 60. I know we were chatting about it in the office, weren't we? You were going to go and watch it back, but you never did.
No, I've watched the extended highlights, and I saw... Hey, don't look at me like that, Freddie. I saw it. We had a big old last quarter, didn't we? End of third, big old fourth, didn't we?
Yeah, it was good. We were up by 8 going into the fourth. We outscored them 18 points to 8 in the final period, and we got there over the line. But, fair play to Surrey Scorchers. They will get... The wins will come for Surrey this year. Like, they will pick up more wins. It's been a really tough year for them with injuries. They've got players starting to come back. I think Andrew Lawrence had his second game back from injury. The wins will come for Surrey. So they went to Plymouth on the Sunday, and they fell short to them. It was a close game, actually, that one down at the Pavilion. So they're getting closer to coming and picking up that win again. It was a very close game, actually. It was... yeah, really close. So Surrey, they'll bounce back. And obviously we travelled to them twice now for Christmas. So we're there on the 23rd, just before Christmas. And we've got that banana skin game in the new year at 2 p.m. tip-off, which I know, just speaking to Drew Lasker there on the call, he knows how tough that can be, those 2 p.m. tip-offs.
We're going to have to get loads of you on the old... online now, because there's so many away games. There's not going to be loads of home games to watch, unfortunately, over the Christmas break. We've obviously got the one next Monday, but apart from that, Joel, they're going to have to tune in on YouTube, on the BBL player, and we want all the support as much as we can anyway, because we want to see how good we're going to do on the road this year. We don't know how we're going to do. We've already lost a couple on the road this year, so I know we had some injuries at that point, but I'm excited to see what we do, Joel.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Don't forget, it's all on BBL Player for free and on YouTube. That performance from Malcolm Delpesh, by the way, he had 15 points, 13 rebounds, 10 of those on the offensive end.
It was I saw some of the clips of him just jumping up and just like tapping in little little putback like layups and all the rest of it. He was awesome, wasn't he?
Yeah. There's a good stat here from the stat man Daniel Routledge. Where is it? That performance from Malcolm Delpesh, he became the first player in the BBL to have 10 offensive rebounds in a game more than once in a season since Willie Clayton of the Manchester Giants back in 2018-19. Did you ever get to watch Willie Clayton play?
Didn't ever. No, I probably did actually.
Absolute monster on the offensive rebounds, so not bad company to be in.
Amazing. Good old Delpesh, he's tearing it up this year, isn't he? I love it.
Yeah. Here's some other news for you around the league. Also from that Surrey game. Really funny clip here. I don't know if you were watching from the start of the third quarter. The guys at Brown Fox cut to Coach Kapoulis on the bench. He was dapping up the team down the bench. And this clip was sent in by Matt Hardy on Twitter. Shout out Matt Hardy. Here's Coach Kapoulis high-fiving the players. Mike Miller just left out there at the front of the bench. He just goes and high-fives himself.
I love that.
How cool was that? Don't worry, Mike. We got you here on the podcast. We'll give you a high five, don't you worry. Next time I see you, we've got you up, mate. Don't worry. Coach won't dap you up, we will. Very good stuff. Other bits of news going on around the league, and we've got to be really quick here. If you follow Bristol Flyers on socials and the Bristol Sport Foundation on socials, you will notice that there is a figure of 8 challenge doing the rounds at the moment. VJ King put the challenge out. You can download the Bristol Sport Foundation app for your chance to enter. It's for the kids. They can win a signed Flyers jersey. We've had some great entries here from the competition, which we can get up on screen now. Basically, we're asking fans to send in shots of them via the app, shots of them dribbling the ball between their legs in a figure of 8 and reversing it around the other way. Here's Leah, Rafi, Otis and Maddie showing off their skills. Look at that.
It's so good.
Incredible
Joel, that's
stuff.
better than you, Joel, when you're at uni.
Yeah, that's better. We've got the video up on screen. We'll clip this bit up for the listeners of the Bristol Flyers podcast. But the future of Bristol Flyers in some great hands here. Those some great skills on show.
And playing basketball in the house, I was never allowed to do that as a kid because I broke too many windows, I think. So.
Great stuff. There is still time to enter that competition. It closes on Saturday, December 17th. So make sure you download the Bristol Sport Foundation app and send in your entries for your chance to win. I think that's everything in the news. One more thing we've got to do before we do wrap the podcast up, and that is spin our friend the wheel.
This is the Bristol Flyers Podcast.
Okay, so we need to quickly add hippopotamus to the list. Joel, why don't you just write an H for now while we're here, because we're running out of time on that empty spot. But we know what that means. We will fill it in. We'll spin the wheel in just 1 second. Now, what we didn't say is Joel actually last week had to get pants into the feed, and I can confirm, even though I want to see him do another one, we can't get the clip up because we had a technical fault, but we did
Well, you
manage.
say technical fault. I just didn't have time to clip it up this week, but I can tell you, I definitely did say the word pants. I did say the word pants. I think if you find it around the end of the first quarter, I think I say something like, the players need to get their big boy pants on here because it was a really low scoring game or something like that. I've just put H up here on the wheel for the time being because that stands for hippopotamus. Sam, are you ready? Shall we give this wheel a spin?
Let's go.
Here we go then.
Indubitably.
Indubitably. That one, of course, sent in from Thomas Bell. If you know the famous Kawhi Leonard clip, you'll know the word indubitably. So that is our word of the week. I'll have to try and squeeze that into the commentary for this weekend. Monday's game, the BBL Cup semi-final against the London Lions.
You're listening to the Bristol Flyers Podcast.
Well, that just about does it for this week's episode of the podcast. I know we had to rush it a bit there at the end, but that was a really great chat we had with Drew Lasker, wasn't it?
It also shows we can call people in, get people up on the old screen, mate, to do some other people from around the world. Why not?
Yeah, we're pushing it. So we're really testing Freddie's ability here to see what he can do. He was flapping around this morning trying to get the live call sorted up, but we got there in the end, and it was quality. Really good chat. Our first neutral guest, and hopefully Drew Lasker has got some brownie points with some of the Bristol Flyers fans after those predictions. Sam, obviously we have a couple more weeks now until the new year. Next week's going to be our Christmas episode. The week after, I think, we spoke about it yesterday, but I think we're going to take a week off, aren't we?
Well, I'm going to be in another country, Joel, so we
are going to take a week off. So we have one more episode to come before the new year, and then we'll come back in the new year even stronger with more episodes of the Bristol Flyers podcast. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. We are available on all major podcast providers and on YouTube. We've got new episodes coming every single Wednesday afternoon. Sam, anything else you want to add before we get this show on the road?
No, not this week, Joel. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you all next week.
Great stuff. See you later.